All right, I hope my mic is okay. Um, this is a demo of the vendor quote system for the purposes of giving us a baseline of what functionality exists and potentially what needs to change or things need to be added, and kind of an outline of the different procedures that it allows, so we have a common reference point. So anyway, I have up here a list of things that I'm going to cover in this. Number one, set up merchandise class user-defined fields. I think there's already two set up, 024 and 021, so we probably don't need to do that. I should also note that I'm doing this demo on your demo system, so this should be the same thing that you experience. Okay, number two, to create the initial quote. And then number three, I'll go in and create some detail. And step four, I'll be setting user-defined field values in the detail lines. Number five, set up the merchandise class for each detail line, which obviously dictates, I should have those switched around, sorry. The merchandise class determines the user-defined fields for each one, so those would be in reverse. Number six, once that's all set, we can create a vendor quote. And number seven, we'll modify the vendor quote detail, check boxes, quantity, etc. Then number eight, create another vendor quote from the original. And number nine, clone a vendor quote. And the reason for those two is just to demonstrate the difference in how you build quotes for multiple different vendors. Number 10, to print the documents. Right now we have 2 of the 3 documents available. I think everybody's aware of that. And number 11, change the status as well as search by the status. And that's for the purposes of your approval process, so that the different people can find the orders that are ready for their stage. Number 12, the final step, which is once everything is approved, copying the quote to a sales order. All right, so that's the gist. Like I said, I think that we have already set up user-defined merchandise class. So I don't know that we need to do that. I'm just going to go right into quote. And enter, start a new quote. And I'm not using any customers in particular. I'm just kind of randomly grabbing one. So I'll set this to quote. I don't know. Sure. I'll add a PO. Save this, and I'm going to add non-stock lines. Non-stock, I think we do have set up. I'll change this to 024. You can do that after the fact too. I should did save and new. And 2. And I'll set this one at 021. And I'm going to actually create the third line with the same merchandise class so that we can demonstrate one of the features we just added. 3. All right, and set that to so we have 3 basic lines. At this point, we should be able to access the user-defined fields for each line. This one has quite a bit more. I'm going to set the initial values for this. We'll say a weight of 23 pounds, percentage, type, uh, handles yes, construction yes, coding yes, sync 4 and 5. All right, so we set some values. I think these are ones that you guys actually made. Um, so I set those. I'll set and again, these are just defaults that will, they're going to default the values in the actual vendor quotes that get created. So I'll save that, and we can verify it saved our values. And on this third line with the same merchandise class as line 2, we're not going to set any values so that we can demonstrate that behavior of automatically setting the user-defined fields flag once we create our vendor quote. So let's see, let me go back to my guideline here. So create a detail, we set the merchandise class in that. So now we're ready to create the vendor quote. Let's go. We can do this from either screen, but we'll do it from here. Again, I'm just picking somebody random. I don't know the data set very well. So we've added our first vendor quote, and that is been set here. It's status of pending. We should be able to go here to the detail. Oh, I did notice this. Let me do this. By default, I'll have to fix it, but this wasn't available to drop down, and it's just a screen resizing. I think I need to do some layout change for this field. But anyway, we see it there. We now also have the vendor view button. All of our fields. So we can make a few changes. First, we'll switch to vendor view. First thing I'll note here is that the user-defined fields flag is not checked for this particular line based on the fact that we didn't add any values. So that's the feature that has to do with how it appears when we actually print it. And then, of course, there's the include column with the checkboxes, whether include or not include a line. Here's one thing I did find is a bug that still exists. When we come in here and it's the first time, I have to click twice to get it to uncheck, and then after that it behaves correctly. But for each one, the first time it sticks, and I have to double click. So I will fix that, but it's not preventative. And once it does indicate the correct check state. All right, so I set a couple of different values there. I guess we could change something else. Let me see. I'll change the description and one more description. And this is just for cloning purposes. All right, so we made some modifications to this particular vendor quote. If I wanted to now create some quotes for other vendors, I would go back here to the vendor quote pop-up. And from here, I'm going to do two. So one, I'm just going to randomly pick and create another vendor quote from the original. And I just do that using this, regular vendor feature. So I did that one. And then I'm going to do one more where I clone from the one that I just modified a moment ago. And I'll pick another name that's easy to distinguish. And now hit clone. And instead of copying from the original, now this continental data should look just like the current one, the A1 plus. So now here in my drop down, it should have all three available. If I switch to the bags and boxes, you'll notice my checkbox comes back because it was copied from the original. If I switch to continental data, it copied over my checkbox changes from the original quote, as well as my description change and any changes to quantity, so on and so forth. So that kind of helps determine process-wise, depending on what you want that particular vendor quote to look like, more like the original or one you've already modified, can determine how you create that. Let's see. back to here. So modified, created these two quotes. All right, so now we're going to print documents. Let's see. So we'll go back here to the header and go to our output. Save our changes. And here we have obviously all our documents, regular quote, the vendor quote, and the customer proposal. The sales order agreement is the one that we're still waiting on some information related to header user-defined fields. Like I explained before, these user-defined fields for the header are related to what's going to print on this sales order agreement document. But like I said, that one's pending. These other two are available, so I'm going to go ahead and print these. It says those completed successfully, and I can go right in here to my document store and see my two documents I've produced. View a PDF. All right, that's great. And same thing with our vendor quote. All right, so we produce those documents. Process-wise, obviously, stuff's going to get sent out to the customer and the vendor, and at some point, it will come back and be ready for your approval status. By default, I created these 4 statuses based on my understanding of what you guys needed, and we can modify this. Right now, it's hard-coded, but we can either modify this or create like a master file situation where you can create your own statuses and then manage it yourself, which probably is the better way because people maybe want to use this differently. But for now, we're starting with pending and then the approval hold. And again, these are status I think you guys understand in the sense that they're related to your approval process, and approved and complete. So we can set these statuses. I'm going to save it on approval hold. Let's say it's at that point. Then I just wanted to demonstrate that we can now search for this for, let's say, when it gets to Donna's phase and she's ready to I believe she is involved in the approval. She can come in here and just search now here in vendor quote status and select approval hold and click query, and we have, we have 2. Yeah, I think this is my one. So there's 2 that are of this status currently, and search for the different ones that way. Right now there's no automation tied to this, but that's what we've implemented so far just for purposes of searching and being able to identify it in its different phases. So I guess that brings us to copy quote to order. So once everything has been approved and is complete, I would assume we can go ahead at this point and copy this quote to an order and get it fulfilled. So we click on copy quote to order here. This top part right here is very specific to this vendor quote process in terms of whether it is to copy from the original quote, which it would do if this was unchecked, or with this checked, which it is by default, it will copy from the vendor quote that you have selected, in this case, Continental Data. So I will just go in here and click generate order. It's going to generate my sales order here, and I can, continue on with my quote, or I can view this order. And here we have it, our brand new sales order. So that covers the current process. I did find some bugs. I corrected, there had been an issue with the vendor quote check boxes. One of them didn't work at all. I corrected that. Like I pointed out, there is still an issue with having to double click when they are checked for the first time, but we'll get that resolved. But I think these are the issues that still exist, hopefully are not showstoppers and allow you to get through that, and give me feedback. And I was hoping that we could relate the feedback to these various steps. These are I try to kind of generically outline these as different segments of functionality, and so hopefully this would get us a start on getting this thing cleaned up and functioning how you guys need it to. Thanks.